Hi, welcome to Toys in the Hood. Despite Games Workshop being pretty protective over their own IP, in the past they've definitely borrowed an idea or two, or three, or four. And so this episode I want to take a look at my top 15 Warhammer characters that have been inspired by fiction, either comics or books. This being the internet, I'm going to make it a top 15. It's going to be a countdown. My criteria is basically how much it amused me and how proud I was when I found the connection. So please enjoy this. At number 15, we've got Inquisitor, Obiwan, Sherlock, Clouseau. I kind of want to get this one out of the way. A lot of people know this. It's actually been around for ages. He's one of the, basically he's given as an example of an Inquisitor in the original Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader book. So we're talking about 1986, 1987 he's been around. He never appears in the background afterwards. He's basically just a sample Inquisitor. He's what an Inquisitor might look like. His name, you've got Obi-Wan from Star Wars, you've got Sherlock Holmes from Sherlock Holmes, and then you've got Inspector Clouseau. Inspector Clouseau is the detective in the Pink Panther movies. It's really quite heavy-handed compared to the others in the list, but I think it's interesting. There's a bit of foresight there. Obviously Sherlock Holmes is a detective, Inspector Clouseau is a detective, Obi-Wan Kenobi isn't really a detective at this point because there's only 3 Star Wars films. But later on, as we get the Clone Wars series, as we get the kind of worlds kind of filled out, Obi-Wan becomes more of a detective character rather than just being a super powerful Jedi. At number 14, we've got Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones. Khal Drogo is the leader of the Dothraki, a ferocious warrior race in Game of Thrones. He gives his name to Khaldor Draigo. Khaldor Draigo is the Grandmaster of the Grey Knights, at least for a bit. The biggest similarity here is the name, Khal Drogo, Khaldor Draigo, but both of them are insanely good warriors. In fact, many people involved in Warhammer 40,000 will tell you that Khaldor Draigo is possibly too good a warrior, and there was a bit of a controversy at the time. Now, they both really enjoy taking their enemies and humiliating them. Khal Drogo, when he fights, he will cut off the hair of people he's defeated so that they're humiliated. They know that he's beaten them. He doesn't give them the mercy of death. Khaldor Draigo, when the former Chapter Master was killed and he became Chapter Master, he basically goes for a walk in Nurgle's garden. He finds Mortarion, the Demon Prince of Nurgle, rips out his heart and then carves onto his heart the name of the former Chapter Master that Mortarion killed. At number 13, we've got the Sharp novels. This gives us the inspiration for one of the absolute favourite characters in Warhammer 40,000, Commissar Gaunt. Commissar Gaunt leads the Tanith First and Only. The Tanith First and Only are a regiment that was raised from, Tanith, which is, or rather it was, a forest world. And as a result, they make exceptional snipers and scouts. The reason it's the first and only is, unfortunately, Tanith gets destroyed, I think, about 20 pages into the first book. And so there's never another regiment raised from there. But it's an epic series of books. There's some 15 novels now, and they're written by Dan Abnett, who Dan Abnett doesn't just have a grasp of Warhammer 40,000. He's written so many novels now. He's a huge influence on it. He's basically written a lot of Warhammer 40,000. In the Sharp series of books, Bernard Cromwell follows Richard Sharp, the 95th Rifles. Sharp is also promoted through the ranks like Gaunt, and the 95th Rifles are riflemen par excellence, basically without equal in the British Army. The books follow their campaigning in France and Spain during the 19th century as they fight Napoleon. The TV series is also worth a look, with Sean Bean playing Sharp in one of his best roles, and also one of the few roles where he doesn't die. Now that's a bit of a spoiler, but that does give away the fact they've managed to make 12 or so episodes of this series. And then their adventures are broadly the same. Gaunt does admittedly have more spaceships and lasers, but both of them spend an awful lot of time trying to support their men, look after their troops, as they must fight against an incompetent officers class who is actually more dangerous to them than their enemy. As I've said, both of these books really focus on the infantry units and their experiences in combat. In Gaunt's Ghost, the Tanith First and Only Regiment is a light infantry unit known for its stealth and reconnaissance abilities. In Sharp's Rifles, the 95th Rifles are renowned for their marksmanship and skirmishing tactics. They both series have pretty intense combat going on. There are lots of fighting and battles, all done from an infantry level. In Warhammer 40,000, I think that's especially interesting because we've got a lot of Space Marines, got a lot of superhumans. To focus on the kind of the real foot troops of the Guard makes for some really interesting stories. And then as a bonus here, Sharp's right-hand man is Sergeant Harper. He carries a naval volley gun from Henry Knock of London, and he's the only person strong enough in the British Army to use it. Normally it's mounted on a ship. The Tanith First and Only have a character Try Again Bragg, who is an infantryman who's strong enough to use a heavy bolter without the need for a tripod. And in fact, Sergeant Harper must have made quite an impression on Games Workshop, because there's not just Try Again Bragg. In the Catechins, there's Gunnery Sergeant Harker. Now, Gunnery Sergeant Harker is a man so strong he carries his heavy bolter as a normal man might carry a rifle without even breaking a sweat. Sound familiar? At number 12, we've got Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider is a Marvel's comic character, also a film, not really as big as the Avengers or anything like that, but kind of a bit of fun if you like your Nicolas Cage. And Ghost Rider is a stuntman who basically dies, comes back from the dead as this sort of avenging spirit. You know, he can appear from anywhere, he's got a flaming skull, and he turns up on his motorbike. This gives us Doom Rider. So Doom Rider, Ghost Rider, the names are pretty similar. Doom Rider is a former Chaos Space Marine of the Emperor's Children. He's basically a demon prince, although he's kept his motorbike and he's kind of kept his marine armour. But he does just turn up anywhere, much like Ghost Rider can, and just generally causes trouble. At number 11, we've got Dracula. So Bram Stoker's Dracula basically gives us the kind of original idea for vampires, and we have one vampire who really embodies this in the Warhammer world, and that's Vlad von Carstein. They have similar powers. They're both the kind of top dog vampire in their world, you know, with underlings that are also vampires. They live in, well, Transylvania for Bram Stoker's Dracula, and then Vlad von Carstein lives in Sylvania, so basically Transylvania without the trans. Not to be confused with Sylvanian families, which you'd find in toy shops at about the same time. They're a little bit more cutesy, not very dark, not very Warhammer-y. Now, Dracula is also based on Vlad the Impaler. Vlad the Impaler, well, that gives us Vlad for Vlad von Carstein. So there you go. It's pretty straightforward, this one. Their powers are the same. I mean, yeah, I don't think this is particularly like Games Workshop stealing anything. Basically, all vampires have stolen off Dracula since forever. At number 10, we've got Judge Dredd. I'll make this one quite quick, as I've covered it in previous videos, but at the same time it gives me an excuse to wear my helmet, show off my magnificent chin. Judge Dredd is from 2000 AD. He is a judge, which is basically like an elite police force of a fascist state. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because Judge Dredd is clearly the influence for the Adeptus Arbites. The Adeptus Arbites are, well, also judge, jury and executioner of the Imperium. They are the police force that basically support the planetary government in ruling, well, planets. There's even a named character in one of the novels. I think it's a Ciaphas Cain novel. It's a character in a TV show, Arbiter Foreboding. At number 9, it's the Flashman series of books. Harry Flashman is the bully in Tom Brown's School Days, a classic novel by Thomas Hughes. George MacDonald Fraser then took this Flashman character and makes him the hero, or rather the anti-hero, of his own series of books. Flashman is a notorious coward, but nonetheless he manages to emerge as a decorated hero through a combination of luck, cunning and manipulation. This is a series of books that Sandy Mitchell has clearly read, as the reluctant hero Ciaphas Cain is clearly inspired by him. Cain frequently downplays his own courage and insists that his actions are the result of motivated by self-preservation rather than heroism. The books are fairly similar. Both of the series employ a first-person narrative style. The protagonists recount their adventures and exploits basically like it's a memoir, like it's diary entries, which allows them to basically add in the characters' thoughts, motivations and perspectives as they're going through their stories. Both our characters have a huge range of anti-hero traits, including selfishness, cowardice, opportunism and a huge propensity for self-preservation. But despite these flaws, they often find themselves in positions of trust or leadership or authority and must navigate complex situations while maintaining their own safety and reputation. Unlike Flashman, one of the key differences here is the Commissar Ciaphas Cain. He actually is a hero who plays it down, whereas Flashman is, well, yeah, Flashman is very interested in his own preservation. Both series are known for their humour and wit. The characters provide a commentary, humorous commentary, and observations on the events and characters around them. Ciaphas Cain's is especially noteworthy, as his kind of dry wit and humour is a huge contrast with the kind of grim darkness of Warhammer 40,000, and this is probably one of the reasons why his books have become so popular. And then both characters have a real strong survival instinct and a talent for improvisation, which has allowed them to escape dangerous situations and come out ahead, despite overwhelming odds. Whether through luck, deception or sheer audacity, they constantly manage to avoid disaster and emerge relatively unscathed from their adventures. At number 8, we've got Malekith. Malekith is a character in both the Marvel comic books, and then Malekith is a character in Warhammer the Old World. They're actually both inspired. Malekith's actually a Norse character from Norse mythology, but I think Marvel kind of brought it to the forefront here. In Marvel Comics, Malekith the Accursed is a supervillain who is primarily the enemy of Thor, god of thunder. He is depicted as the ruler of the Dark Elves, and he's known for his cunning, sorcery, and hatred for the Asgardians. Malekith wields a dark magic, and he's often portrayed as a master manipulator, orchestrating schemes to conquer realms and gain power. He's probably best known nowadays for his role as the main antagonist in the film Thor, the Dark World movie, which is a shame because that's also known as Thor the Bad One. In the Warhammer Fantasy universe, while Malekith is known as Malekith the Witch King, he is also the ruler of the Dark Elves, hails from the land of Nagaroth. He's quite a complex figure, Malekith is. He was once the heir to the Elven throne, but he basically failed the test of the Flame of Azuran, which is this flame you have to walk through. If you make it all the way to the end, you've proved yourself worthy. He failed, he received the ultimate burn, and it's fair to say he didn't take it too well. Just like our other Malekith, he then spends a lot of time plotting, trying to reclaim his birthright and conquer the lands of the Ulthlan, which is the home of the High Elves. As a bit of an aside, he's always kind of reminded me, whenever I've read about him, Warhammer's Malekith, of the character Mordred from King Arthur, trying to gain his throne back with the help of all this sorcery, the aid of his mother. His mother is Morathi, and another massive character in the Warhammer world. At 7, it's Racin and Caraman Magir. So Games Workshop originally started when Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone began importing Dungeons & Dragons into the UK. So it's not surprising that a fair few creatures made their way from Dungeons & Dragons into Warhammer, and a couple of characters have too. The Dragonlance Chronicles came out in 1984. They were incredibly popular. To keep it very simple, it's basically a pulp fantasy Lord of the Rings, and it follows quite a large band of adventurers as they try to defeat the dragon armies of the evil dragon god Takhisis. There's also dungeons as well. It ticks all the boxes. Two of these adventurers are Racin and Caraman Magir. They're twins. Caraman is a mighty warrior, maybe not the sharpest knife in the hobby set, and then Racin is an intelligent, talented mage. However, Racin is incredibly frail and he needs his brother's support, but then resents him for it. In Warhammer, similarly, we have the High Elves Tyrion and Teclis. They're twin brothers. Tyrion is the skilled warrior and Teclis is a powerful mage and scholar. The relationships with both the siblings in these pairs are quite complex. There's often a mix of rivalry, loyalty and love between them. Racin and Caraman's relationship is especially intricate, with Racin harbouring resentment towards his brother, but ultimately needing him for support. Similarly, Tyrion and Teclis have a close bond, but they also have disagreements and conflicts, particularly with their different priorities. Tyrion is very much about protecting the race of High Elves, whereas Teclis is more about protecting, the entire world, the universe and beyond. Both of these siblings have epic destinies. Racin ends up as the head of the colleges of high sorcery, and Teclis the High Lawmaster of Hoeth. Tyrion is the consort of the Elf Queen before he gets reborn as a god. Caraman's fate is a little more straightforward. He ends up running a bar, the Inn of the Last Home. But that said, he ends up running a bar after he's killed a god. At number 6, it's Batman. So as well as being set in the future, Warhammer 40,000 is notably dark and grim. A comic character who's also known for being grim and dark is Batman. He's haunted by the murder of his parents. He's driven by a desire to fight crime and bring justice to the Gotham City. The latest Batman movie, the rather aptly named The Batman, has a particularly broody Batman. But only one man in Warhammer 40,000 could give him a run for his money. And that's Konrad Curze, the Primarch of the Night Lords. He's a tortured and deeply troubled character, he's haunted by visions of the future, and he's driven by a brutal sense of justice. Both these characters operate outside of the conventions of normal law enforcement. They employ vigilantism as a means to combat crime and maintain order. Batman prowls the streets of Gotham City using his skills and resources to strike fear in the hearts of criminals. Lacking Batman's superpower of being rich, Konrad Curze takes a kind of more hands-on approach as he employs ruthless and brutal tactics to enforce his own brand of justice on the planet of Nostromo, where he was abandoned. They're both master tacticians and strategists who excel in the arts of stealth and deception, Batman uses his intellect and detective skills to outsmart his opponents. Konrad Kurz has, well, he has supernatural, preternatural rather, senses and an uncanny ability to anticipate his enemies' moves. He also strikes fear into the hearts of those who oppose him. And both characters have some severe issues. Konrad Kurz was subjected to a brutal upbringing on the night-shrouded world of Nostromo, which instilled in him a twisted sense of justice and a penchant for violence. Batman's parents were murdered in front of him when he was a child, which drove him to basically dedicate his life to fighting crime and protecting innocence. As Freud would say, if it's not one thing, it's your mother. At number 5, we've got Cruella de Vil. Cruella de Vil is the big bad guy in Disney's 101 Dalmatians. Basically, she's out to make herself a coat. She needs 101 Dalmatians to do it. Presumably, in the world of Warhammer 40,000, she's succeeded, because I've never seen a mention of a Dalmatian in any Warhammer 40,000 product. One thing, though, you do see is she gives her name to Cruella the Vile. Cruella the Vile is one of the special characters in the Dark Eldar Codex, the original Dark Eldar Codex, that was released in 1998. Aside from the name, they don't have a great deal in common. I have read at some points that they both kind of share a love for the colour red, which is great because it does allow me to share a very quick story about when the Cruella the Vile model was released. So apparently Games Workshop had to basically issue like a warning to all of their stores to not paint the Cruella de Vil model as if she's wearing suspenders, that she had to be fully dressed. Now, to give you an idea of how important that is, here is Cruella de Vil in the usual paint scheme, and here is Cruella de Vil in suspenders. So, yeah, bear in mind, I mean, Games Workshop's essentially toy shops. You can't really have this on display for kids. So number 4, voila! In view, a humble vaudevillian veteran cast vicariously as both victim and villain by the vicissitudes of fate. This visage, no mere veneer of vanity, is a vestige of the vox populi, now vacant, vanished. However, this valorous visitation of a bygone vexation stands vivified, and has vowed to vanquish these venal and virulent vermin, vanguarding vice and vouchsafing violent and vicious and voracious violation of volition. The only verdict is vengeance, a vendetta, held as votive not in vain, for the value and veracity of such shall one day indicate the vigilant and the virtuous. Verily, this choice of verbiage veers most verbose, so let me simply add that my very good honour to meet you, and you can call me V. Number 4 is V for Vendetta. V is a rebel against the fascist government in future Britain. He wears a Guy Fawkes mask to hide his identity. V is also very clearly the inspiration for Vespero's Vendetta. Vespero's Vendetta is a Dogs of War unit. So Dogs of War were, in the old world, Warhammer the old world, Dogs of War are a group of mercenaries. They were introduced into Warhammer in the 90s. The idea is they can sort of fight for any army, pretty much. They're all inspired from history or fiction in some way, sometimes borrowed pretty shamelessly. And Vespero's Vendetta is a group of duelists. They fight as skirmishers. Their leader, Vespero, wears a mask. It's a bit more ornate than the Guy Fawkes mask that V wears. In fact, it's more the type that you might see in a masked ball, but the gist is the same. He's also said to have a magnificent moustache, just as the Guy Fawkes has a magnificent moustache. As an added bonus, Vespero also carves the initials of Vespero's Vendetta, so the double V, into people he defeats in duels. Now, in the comics and the film V, there are V for Vendetta, there are a lot of V's kind of slashed everywhere, but this is more of an allusion to Zorro. Zorro is also a masked duelist, and he would when he defeats someone, rather than killing them, I think he's a children's TV character, so doesn't tend to kill many people if he can, he ends up slashing with his sword a Z into his opponents. At number 3, it's the Man with No Name. So the next inspiration is for the Dark Angels, or rather the ex-Dark Angel, Cypher. He's inspired by Clint Eastwood's character, the Man with No Name.
See, my mule don't like people laughing. It's the crazy idea you're laughing at him. Now, if you apologize like I know you're going to, I might convince him that you really didn't mean it.
Both characters are shrouded in mystery and ambiguity. Clint Eastwood's character in Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy, which consists of A Fistful of Dollars, A Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, is famously known as the Man with No Name, and his true identity and background are never truly revealed. Similarly, Cypher in Warhammer 40,000 is a figure of mystery within the setting, known for his enigmatic actions and cryptic motives. I will say all of this, that I've not read the latest Cypher book, so if that explains everything, great. Both these characters are independent agents. They both work alone, looking at their own objectives. The man with no name is a lone gunslinger. He drifts from town to town, where he then gets embroiled in conflicts, where he'll play both sides to his advantage. Cypher in Warhammer 40,000 is also a rogue operative. He operates outside the bounds of authority and has his own agenda. He can fight on the sides of either Chaos or the Imperium of Man. As we say, when they're fighting for both sides, both of these characters are kind of morally grey, and it's hard to say whether they are heroes or villains. The man with no name operates with his own moral code, which may involve acts of violence and deception, but also quite a bit of compassion and justice. Cypher is the same, very ambiguous, but we do know that he fights for Chaos, but then he also can fight with the Imperium. Both these characters are highly skilled fighters who excel in combat. The man with no name is a proficient gunslinger, very much with a quick draw, and in homage to that, Cypher also used to fight with 2 pistols. And this is one of the inspirations that Games Workshop pretty freely admits to. It was a quiz question in one of the White Dwarfs. I think it might have been 217. It was around that time. And the question was, who is Cypher inspired by? The answer, the man with no name. At number 2, it's Elsa from Frozen. Elsa is clearly the inspiration for Warhammer's Ice Queen of Kislev, Katarina Bocker. Sort of. Okay, at least they share the same roots. So Elsa is based on the title character, the Snow Queen, a Danish fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. The Ice Queen of Kislev is also based on the Snow Queen. In fact, it's a pretty common trope, to be honest. The Witch in The Lion, the Witch in the Wardrobe, also based on the Snow Queen. So let's take a look at what they have in common. Both Elsa and the Ice Queen of Kislev possess ice-based powers. Elsa can create and manipulate ice and snow, using her abilities to shape the environment and create intricate ice structures. Similarly, the Ice Queen of Kislev is a powerful sorcerer, and she has control over frost and cold magic, using her powers to defend her kingdom and strike fear into her enemies. They both experience isolation due to their powers. Elsa isolates herself from others out of fear of hurting them, and creates a barrier between herself and the outside world. The Ice Queen of Kislev, although she rules over the kingdom of Kislev, she is portrayed as a reclusive figure. She lives in her frozen palace, surrounded by icy landscapes. And then both characters have visual aesthetics associated with their icy powers. Elsa is often depicted with a distinctive blue and white colour scheme, which reflects her association with ice and snow. The Ice Queen of Kislev is similarly portrayed with icy features, clad in frost-covered armour and surrounded by an aura of cold magic. One other thing they also have in common is neither of them appear to be in the new Warhammer The Old World game, which is an absolute travesty, as the previews of Kislev, when the project was first announced, were really, really exciting. So in true chart show style, before I get to number 1, I'm going to do a recap of the top 14 that we've looked at so far. At number 15, we had Inquisitor, Obiwan, Sherlock, Clouseau, managing to bring together Star Wars, Sherlock Holmes and the Pink Panther into one character. Also, the oldest character on this list. We then had Khaldor Draigo. Khaldor Draigo, the leader of the Grey Knights, is inspired by Khal Drogo, the leader of the Dothraki, in the Game of Thrones novels. At 13, we have Commissar Gaunt. Commissar Gaunt is inspired by Richard Sharp of Bernard Cromwell fame. We then at 12 have Doom Rider, the Slaanesh Demon Prince. He's inspired by Marvel Comics' Ghost Rider character. At 11, we have Vlad von Karstein, the vampire of the Old World. He is inspired by Dracula, the original vampire. At number 10, we have Arbiter Foreboding. In fact, all the Adeptus Arbiters, who are inspired by the Judge Dredd comics. We then have Ciaphas Cain of the Sandy Mitchell novels. He's inspired by Harry Flashman and that series of books. At 8, we have Malekith from the Old World, leader of the Dark Elves, inspired by Malekith from Marvel Comics, leader of the Dark Elves, inspired by Malekith from Norse mythology, leader of the Dark Elves. Then at number 7, we have Tyrion and Teclis, the High Elven twins. They are inspired by Racin and Caraman Magir from the Dragonlance Chronicles. There's Konrad Kurz, effectively the Dark Avenger, inspired by the other Dark Avenger, the Dark Knight Batman. And then at number 5, we have Cruellaugh the Vile, the Dark Eldar character, inspired by Cruella de Vil, the Disney character. At 4, we have Vespero of Vespero Vendetta, who is inspired by V for Vendetta. And then at number 3, we have Cypher, the Dark Angels, or the ex-Dark Angels character. He's inspired by the Man with No Name, Clint Eastwood's character in the Dollars trilogy. Then we have the Ice Queen of Kislev. The Ice Queen of Kislev is inspired by Elsa from Frozen, who's also inspired by the kind of Snow Queen from Hans Christian Andersen's novels. So coming in at number 1, my choice is, well, my choice is actually 3 characters, and they're bloody brilliant. So, in Warhammer, Lizardmen, or Seraphim, as I guess they're known now, they have really good pun names. Some examples are, there's a Teeny Weeny, there's a Tic-Tac-Toe, there's a Tequila, and there's a Lottle Bottle. But 3 characters really, really stand out for the purpose of this list. Or rather, the characters don't stand out, the names of their steeds do. So we have 3 characters. We have Kroq-Gar, who is a Lizardman who rides a Carnosaur. We have Lord Mazdamundi, who is a Slann mage priest who rides a Stegodon. And then we have the skink that I've mentioned already, Tic-Tac-Toe, who flies around on a Pterodon. Now, the Carnosaur is called Grimlock, the Stegodon is called Zlag, and the Pteranodon is called Zwoop. These are the names of Dinobots. So Dinobots are basically Transformers, but rather than turn into vehicles, they turn into dinosaurs. Pretty cool. The T-Rex in Dinobots is called Grimlock, so that gives us the name of the Carnosaur, Grimlock, quite straightforward. The Triceratops Dinobot is called Slag, so this gives us Zlarg in Warhammer. And then, lastly, the Pterodactyl Dinobot is called Swoop, which gives us Tic-Tac-Toe's mount, Zwoop. It's brilliant, and spreading it over 3 characters is actually pretty subtle. Grimlock's fairly obvious, a lot of people have heard of him from the Dinobots, but to list all 3 of them is a bit more of a challenge. And it's great that they've managed to keep this theme across different characters. There you have it, my top 15 characters that Games Workshop borrowed from novels and comics. Thanks for listening. I've had a really fun time putting this one together, doing my research and stuff. There's a couple of others that I've not included, so like there's the Brothers Karamazov, an old Russian novel that gives us the Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor Fyodor Karamazov. Then there's the Shakespeare play, Midsummer Night's Dream, which has Oberon and Titania. They're the leader of the fairies in this. And they become Orion and Ariel, who are the rulers of the Wood Elf and later the Sylvaneth in Warhammer and Age of Sigmar. If there's any others you can think of, please shout up in the comments. I mean, there's loads out there, I know, and I can't get all of these references at all, so it'd be brilliant to hear some that you've got. And then don't forget to like and subscribe. Please tell your friends about the videos. I've got other videos that go into deep dives about the origins of names and characters. It's something that I really, really love and feel quite passionate about. So I've got 3 videos that are about the origins of the Space Marine Primarchs. I've got 1 so far about the Dark Angels, and then a couple on the origins of the Tyranids. I'm going to be doing more in future. I certainly want to do Adeptus Mechanicus, and then with the Old World coming out, I think kind of Bretonnians with their Arthurian kind of inspiration, I think that could make a fun video as well. But again, if there's anything else you want to see, shout up. You know, I've kind of looking, well, I've got loads of ideas, but it's so cool to know what you guys want as well, because, well, without you guys, I'd be talking to myself, really. So, cheers, thanks for listening, and see you soon.